Hey everyone, welcome to Realization Hub. My name is Michelle Korazov-Dinu, and I'm an intuitive counselor, healer, and channeler that loves to bridge the gap between the unseen world of spirit, intuition, consciousness, and energy, and how it impacts our everyday human life. So today's video is an energy update for October 2021. It is recorded in the present moment, so it is timeless. Always some good wisdom in these videos. I'll be going over the energy dynamics going on in mass consciousness, those of you going through your awakening, and those of you going through your embodied enlightenment. If you like these videos, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. It really helps me out a lot. Let's go ahead and get started. All right, so when I was looking at the energy of mass consciousness, I noticed a few different layers going on. Today I am going to be pulling some cards from this beautiful Moonology deck. But yeah, when I was looking at mass consciousness, I noticed that there was like this, oh my gosh, these cards are like incredibly mixed up. Here we go. All right. So when I was looking at the energy of mass consciousness, one thing I was noticing just as an overall theme with mass consciousness was that there is an individual kind of change in direction that's happening on a personal level, kind of on a collective level, where everyone's kind of starting to pivot, starting to change in direction in their lives. Maybe they're changing their home, their job, their relationships, something with their health. But everyone seems to be kind of making like a pivot towards a new direction. Or at least that's in the air, on a massive level. Really what I notice about that is that it's born from like an emotional shift or an emotional connection that's starting to happen on a collective level. In the past, if you look at our culture, a lot of people's emotional needs on a collective level were being suppressed or dismissed, or were just completely disconnected from the equation. So people were in relationships that were abusive and unfair and, not really meeting their personal needs. Same with their jobs. They were working hard for not a lot of money. They were probably in some abusive situations or dysfunctional dynamics. Maybe even the same thing going on with their home life or their health. Just things weren't really working for people on an emotional level anyways. And for whatever reason, throughout this big kind of global event and this kind of ongoing global awakening that's happening, the emotions are starting to come to the surface on a collective level, and people are starting to get a hint of what's working, what's not working. And a lot of the people on an individual level that are changing their direction in their life, they're actually starting to kind of connect with, some of their emotional needs that weren't met and starting to fulfill those in a different way. So definitely this is a sign of a change in direction on an individual level, on a massive level, as well as, more of a decision or change in direction based off emotional needs of the collective. And this is overall like a part of the bigger preparation that mass consciousness is going through, because they're kind of right on the edge of taking a big leap, where maybe a whole new direction kind of comes about for the entire planet on a collective level. Like where home life changes direction, where jobs or money or finances or health, for the whole entire planet. Somehow it kind of changes direction. Maybe it involves technology, or something else. But really, I'm just kind of looking at the energy and noticing that it's starting on an individual basis first. And that is part of the preparation that's happening for the massive level when, mass consciousness eventually, takes a leap in a new direction on the planet. Some things to keep in mind. The actual experience of this happening for people is kind of a mixed bag of experiences. If you've ever gone through like big change in your own life before, whether you change a job, relationship, health, home, some of the major things that can change in someone's life, it can be a mixed bag of moments of excitement and clarity and looking forward to the change. It can also be mixed with feelings of doubt, fear, loneliness, grieving, things that might question that change or resist that change. And that's kind of what's in the air in October. It's kind of like a strobe light, just really fast moments of brightness that come through the day or the week or the month for people, where they have a good time, they're connected to their clarity, they feel good about something, things are going well. And then those fast moments of, darkness, where maybe they're dealing with some internal resistance or fear or trigger that's, putting a damper on things, making it challenging, making it scary to go into that new direction. So I call that kind of like the strobe light effect, kind of happening in mass consciousness. Fast moments of bright and darkness, as well as kind of a spiraling that I start to notice in mass consciousness in October. And by that I mean there's just like more consciousness coming into mass consciousness. The awareness is rising in mass consciousness. There is kind of a global awakening happening, so that rise in consciousness is kind of piercing through, mass consciousness, kind of like when you see a big cloud and there's rays of light kind of piercing through that cloud, and it can look like really beautiful, like heaven shining through, And that's kind of what I see happening with mass consciousness, is that, mass consciousness isn't just this big, obese mass of unconscious energy anymore. It does have some consciousness to it, because, there are a lot of people on the planet that are increasing their level of consciousness. So what does that mean? What I'm noticing is that kind of starts to create a spiral effect in mass consciousness, where mass consciousness might be kind of repeating patterns, but each time they repeat a pattern, they're kind of coming to a new level of perspective on it, a new level of wisdom or integration or healing, as they kind of continue that spiral. And it might feel like they're repeating patterns, but each time they repeat a pattern, it's kind of raising the level of awareness around that pattern or around that wound or around that limitation or whatever mass consciousness might be kind of going through. So I'm starting to kind of notice on a mass consciousness level, kind of like this spiral effect happening. It's happening really fast right now. And that's kind of what I notice about October and some of the energy stuff that's happening in October. It seems to be happening very fast, kind of like the strobe light, where it's just like moments of happiness and clarity and, enjoying life, and, moments of like, resistance and fear and, things falling apart or whatever it might be. So it's happening pretty fast. It's definitely spiraling pretty quickly in October. But I also notice another layer about October, and that's where I see, a lot of mental activity rising in mass consciousness. That might have to do with some of the individual change that's happening on a collective level, kind of all over the planet. Sometimes when we go into the unknown, the mind can get really activated, because the mind has a job, and one of its jobs is to help us survive and make sure we kind of stay inside of our own box. And if you will, like when you go into a change in your life, especially a change in direction, you might not have all your ducks in a row. You might not know all the details and what's going to happen and how it's going to work out. It might not all be in place all of a sudden. It's kind of a journey to get there. So sometimes a change in direction on an individual basis can be very unknown, and that can really trigger the mental body or the mind into kind of freakouts, overthinking, trying to figure it all out, trying to understand what's happening. So I do kind of notice like a rise in mental activity happening in October. But with that said, there's some wisdom kind of coming through in mass consciousness, because there is this kind of rise in mental activity. And sometimes that can get people stuck in the middle of change. You know, their mind gets so activated and so freaked out that it actually stops them from making a change, or just slows them down or gets them stuck in some way. And I kind of see this wisdom coming through in mass consciousness, and this wisdom of taking breaks and distracting ourselves, you know, and that brings me to another layer that I was picking up about mass consciousness, is kind of like when you go see like a baseball game or some kind of sports game, you know, that's really in the air in mass consciousness in October. Like mass consciousness really enjoying like, you know, good old sports games, like, you know, on TV, going to them in person. But it's a good metaphor as well for taking breaks and having fun. That seems to be kind of like the elixir to help lubricate mass consciousness through this kind of change in direction, is, you know, just moments of like distraction and fun and entertainment, and just, you know, getting outside of your mind, you know, doing something that, you know, allows you to take a break from overthinking and figuring things out. And the reason why there's a lot of wisdom to that is sometimes we have to mentally disconnect from our minds when we're allowing change to happen. Because sometimes our minds cannot figure out the change and how it's going to work out and how it's all going to come together. But spiritually, when you get out of your own way and you go into a state of trust and you let things unfold and you allow, it all comes together for you, you know, and you don't have to figure it out. It just kind of happens magically, synchronistically, falls into place for you. And so one of the strategies that some people have used to get outside of their mind and get out of their own way so that they can allow some change to happen is to, in fact, distract themselves. And so that's kind of the wisdom I see coming through in October. There is definitely some harmony happening in October, some, you know, some calm, some peace, some entertainment, some feel-good energies coming through October on a mass consciousness level. And that's because mass consciousness is kind of taking some breaks from life, just to enjoy life, just to have fun. And that's the good news about October. You know, there's still definitely division in the air, just like if you went to a sports game, you know, there's going to be people rooting on each side for opposite results. And that is still happening on the earth. Division is still increasing. The gap between the division is still increasing. But at the same time, there's kind of like, you know, this continuance of rise in consciousness on the earth. And that is impacting mass consciousness. And now there is kind of some wisdom flowing through mass consciousness as well. Not necessarily where people are kind of mentally clicking into that wisdom and saying, oh, I'm so mental this month, I'm gonna, you know, distract myself. You know, they aren't exactly aware of why they're in a lot of distractions in October. But that's how wisdom works. You don't have to mentally understand it. It just kind of comes through and brings some grace. And that's the kind of grace that I see happening in October for mass consciousness, is just this wisdom of taking breaks so that you can get out of your own way, so that you can disconnect mentally, so that you don't have to figure everything out, so that you can just kind of allow the energy to serve you and to fall into place and to unfold, and allow each individual to kind of just pivot or change their direction in some way in their life. It might not be happening for everyone, but it is happening on a massive level, and that's kind of what I'm noticing. And ultimately, I see that as part of the preparation for this big leap that mass consciousness is going to be taking in the future. Because I continue to see mass consciousness kind of like at the edge of a leap. They're just kind of hanging out at like this dead end and, trying to figure it out and trying to figure out how to make the change. So with that said, I'm going to pull some cards and see if there's anything else that comes up about mass consciousness in October. Here we go. This one says, a fiery climax approaches. Woohoo. And it says, full moon in Aries. Full moon in Aries. All right, let me see if I can notice any images in here. Well, I definitely feel like a conclusion kind of energy. Like, in order to change direction and go into a new direction or any kind of major change in your life, a lot of times that involves an ending. Okay. And because I'm picking up on this being like an emotional change for people, like the reason why they are making this change is because they need to fulfill some emotional need. It makes me think that there might be just like an increase in intensity of emotion in October for those that are changing direction, to help them kind of be done with something, to finally just close the book or burn the bridge or close the door or, leave the stage, whatever it is. It just seems like something in October, the intensity of emotions arising helps to kind of finalize an ending that supports the new beginning or the new direction that someone might be taking. So, at the same time, we might be seeing a rise in emotions in October. Another thing that this brings up for me is grief. The best example I can come up with is if you have ended like a long-term relationship. Sometimes there's a grieving process. Even if you are very clear about why you're ending that relationship, sometimes there's a grieving process because within that relationship experience, people kind of dream of the potentials of that relationship. And then when they end that relationship, they kind of grieve the loss of those potentials. Like, we were supposed to have kids together, or we were supposed to, buy a house in Bali, or, just the dreams that were kind of drifting out there about that relationship. They all start to, release, let go. And sometimes there's a grieving process around that, what was meant to be, or what you had hoped to be, or what the potentials were. And sometimes leaving behind a job or a home or, a relationship can bring up grief because there's kind of a process of letting go of the potentials that were there that are no longer going to be there. And this is kind of what I feel in October with this kind of rising of emotions, and a conclusion, like a part of that conclusion in the direction that you're leaving behind, or that mass consciousness is leaving behind, is, a kind of a grieving process. See if there's anything else about mass consciousness. Oh, that definitely... Conclusions are within reach. Another full moon eclipse. Okay. Excuse me. Eclipses happen suddenly. The energy of an eclipse is kind of a sudden change. It can happen overnight. Everything's going the way it is, and then something happens and it completely changes, and it's a permanent change. And eclipses have some wisdom to them. It's kind of like a big tsunami wave, and it can just kind of come through and wipe away anything that maybe you're refusing to change or you're digging in your heels to change. And so there might be some kind of event in October or experience in October that mass consciousness experiences on a collective level, or maybe just on an individual level happening for a lot of people, where just something kind of changes overnight. The world changes overnight. Someone gets eclipsed out of your life. A job changes overnight. Or your home changes overnight. Suddenly you get an opportunity and you have to move away, across the country or to a different place, So this is kind of that energy of like sudden change, things happening overnight. Yeah. And I see the image of a donkey in here. So for me, when I see an image of like a donkey, it definitely has that stubborn quality. So if mass consciousness has been digging in their heels in any way, or slowing things down, or not really listening to their emotional needs, there's something happening on an maybe individual or collective level that kind of shoves them out of it. Kind of breaks apart the stubbornness of mass consciousness or that individual that was preventing change from happening in their life. And this ultimately helps kind of the ending. So I feel like even though I'm picking up on that energy of like a change in direction and a new direction, there's more of that focus on the ending in October versus like the actual new beginning or the new direction and the experience of the new direction. It's kind of like the beginning of going in a new direction, which involves an ending or bringing things to conclusion or wrapping things up, dealing with the old, so that you can go into the new. All right, I'm going to go ahead and move on to those of you that are going through your awakening. Hey, for those of you going through your awakening, I'm going to get started with the energy dynamics happening for you in October. One of the first things I notice is some changes in your mental body. A lot of times in awakening, there's some big releases that happen, some big deconstruction moments of your own energy, belief systems, old patterns, identities, just kind of like an old house breaking down. Sometimes you have to demolish that house so that you can build a new one. And that's kind of what's happening in your energy throughout awakening. Just a lot of deconstruction so that you can open up the space for something new. And a part of those experiences might involve changes in your mind where old beliefs are releasing, old pathways in your brain are kind of dissolving and deconstructing. Your ability to access areas of your mind might increase or change in some way. And so that's kind of what I'm noticing in October. Maybe the increase of thoughts, beliefs, mental activity, mood swings, fatigue, feeling disoriented, feeling confused, feeling dumb. These are all different symptoms you might have when your mind goes through a type of change. And really, there's nothing to be afraid of with that. Just be aware that your mind has to eventually catch up to some of the new energy that you're allowing to change and embody. So one of the reasons why you see that happening is that you're beginning to have kind of moments with your inner master self. And really all that means is you're beginning to have a stronger relationship with your wisdom. And I'm kind of noticing where, you might have days where you feel a little bit more human, where you're perceiving from that human mind and that human perspective. And then you might have days where you are suddenly, feel like some kind of spiritual master, where you have a lot of wisdom, you have a lot of knowingness, you have some certainty, you have clarity, you have a different perspective on your life, and that's kind of what it might feel like, this kind of oscillating or going back and forth between kind of your human self and your master self or your wisdom self is another way to say that. But I do notice things kind of dissolving on a mental level, and changing on a mental level. And that is occurring because of this kind of opening you might be having, or just this new relationship that's strengthening with your own wisdom. So when I was looking at like an image for you in October, on the surface, things look pretty still, almost like a still pond, not a lot going on, not a lot of activity going on in the life, or not a lot of drama, if you will. But underneath the surface, it seemed like a lot was going on, kind of like that metaphor for the lotus growing in a pond. It doesn't blossom in clear water, it blossoms in muddy water. And that's because muddy water has a lot more nutrients to nourish the lotus for it to blossom. And that metaphor is used all the time for awakening because, a lot of times we're stirring our energy pot and we're kind of creating a muddy mess and triggering ourselves and going through discomfort and moments where we don't have clarity. And all of that, in a backwards kind of way, really helps us open up and blossom. So you might be on the surface, maybe not a lot going on, not a lot of activity in your life, or big changes happening, but underneath the surface, a lot getting triggered, a lot getting stirred up energetically. And this is providing a type of opening to your own wisdom, and it's allowing your wisdom to kind of come through, moments of wisdom, moments of knowingness and certainty. And this is all kind of also contributing to the mental detox that's starting to happen for those of you going through awakening. At least a phase of mental detox happening in October where maybe old beliefs are releasing, negative beliefs. And everyone experiences that differently. So I'm going to go ahead and pull some cards for you guys. I was using this deck called the Archetypes, and I have been kind of shuffling some of these cards as I'm talking. Here, I've got one coming out, and it's the River. Yeah. So it's interesting that this river came up, because to me, one of the things I think of when I look at a river, I mean, there's a lot of different things that come to mind, but in particular, I love the visual of a river as a way to visualize your stream of thoughts and your stream of consciousness. And sometimes it's nice to visualize a river, close your eyes and visualize a river and just observe it and see, what does it look like when I'm observing it? Is it like, big and full of strong rapids? Is it going in one direction? Is it going uphill? Is it going downhill? Is it going left? Is it going right? Is it really thin? Is it really narrow? Is it really wide? Is it slow? Is it fast? These are all the observations you can have of your own stream of thoughts or stream of consciousness flowing through you. And it might be some kind of visual that you can work with throughout your month, is just kind of checking in on visually what your stream of thoughts look like. But in particular, a lot of times when your thoughts, you kind of start absorbing, or whether you're absorbing someone else's thoughts or you are releasing old thoughts, sometimes that river can get really strong, like rapids. It can get really fast. It can just kind of be relentless and ongoing and kind of intense. And so if your mind starts kind of getting intense in October, that might be a sign that you're commingled with other people, that you're maybe picking up on the thoughts going on in mass consciousness, or it just could be a symptom of you going through a mental detox. So funny thing is I was already kind of picking this up for mass consciousness in September. And so I went ahead and created a group healing session and a live guided meditation offered in October, specifically focused on the mental body and a mental release. So if you are struggling with your mind in October, you might check out some of the links below my description box where you can sign up for a group healing session or a live guided meditation to help you release foreign thoughts, thoughts that belong to other people, or just help you, manage your current spiritual detox that's happening on a mental level. So that's funny that came up. I'm going to go ahead and pick one more card for you guys. Whoa, okay. Yeah, this card popped out, the Village. I actually see someone leaving a village in this card, when I look at it clairvoyantly. So what this tells me is kind of like a part of this mental detox that you're doing is kind of taking a step out of mass consciousness or taking a step out of group energy. Maybe you have been really enmeshed in your family energy or your ancestral energy or mass consciousness or just like a certain community or group in your life. And perhaps that has limited you and it goes against some type of interchange that is happening, and it keeps you stuck or stagnant with that. And so although you might not physically leave that group, you might still live within mass consciousness or go to the same communities or have relationships with your family members. Energetically, you seem to be kind of taking a step outside of that group energy. So you're coming more into your own personal sovereign kind of energy versus being kind of in a group energy, if you will. And that's one of the reasons why your mental body might be very activated and going through some detoxing in October, because it's helping you kind of step out of the nest, step out of the box, step out of the group energy and kind of be in your own communication with yourself. All right. I hope you have a good October. Happy Halloween if you celebrate it. And again, if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. I'm going to go ahead and get started with those of you going through your embodied enlightenment. Hello to those of you going through your embodied enlightenment. I'm going to go ahead and get started with some of the energy dynamics that I see you going through in October. My mind's a little funky lately. I've been talking about the mind all day in this video, and I can feel it myself. I can feel myself having kind of like blips in my mind where suddenly I forget someone's name that I know for a long time, or like I'm just, trying to say like a familiar word and I can't, or I stutter or something. So I can definitely feel some of the mental stuff happening on a global level. But with that said, I want to talk about you. So in October, I see those of you going through embodied enlightenment, going through a type of release around outside dynamics. I guess another way I can say that is you have been holding on to dynamics, energy dynamics that take you outside of yourself, that kind of have you look for your answer or your guidance or your intuition or what's next for you outside of you. Your answer, your clarity, your wisdom, whatever it might be. There's still some energy dynamics kind of going on in your energy that bring you outside yourself. And so I noticed quite a big release happening for you in October where, some of these dynamics have been positive. Like, oh, I really love this person. I'm going to put them on a pedestal and listen to everything they have to say and totally give my power away to them and just let them tell me how to live my life, So maybe there's been some positive dynamics that have put you outside of yourself. I also see negative dynamics that you're releasing, negative dynamics where, you have a really bad habit of, just giving all your energy to someone else. Or maybe you have, a bad habit of hiding and feeling scared and asking other people to tell you what to do. So I'm just throwing out like random examples right now. But overall, what I'm trying to say is that you're kind of cleaning up, your energy in October. You're having a release. You're letting some things go. And what I noticed about it overall is just a theme of energy dynamics that have put you outside of yourself, because it looks like you're kind of increasing your ability to really go within, stay within, feel connected within, and let that be like your true state of navigation, of navigating from within. Another thing I noticed about those of you going through embodied enlightenment was this energy of the firefly and or dragonfly, however you want to say it. So first thing that comes to me when I see a dragonfly is kind of this ability to traverse two different worlds. The dragonfly can fly in the air, and it can also kind of land on the water, and it loves to be around the water or the land. So it's kind of this creature, this insect that has this ability to traverse different worlds, and that's definitely what I notice about you in October is your ability to traverse, the spirit world, the physical world, your intuitive world, whatever it might be, and how that kind of serves you with this kind of release that you're having. Another thing that I picked up about you was kind of this wisdom that you can't go wrong. I kind of generally feel that you could be allowing some type of change in your life. And I generally just got the impression that you really can't go wrong with it. It's actually not a matter of what's the right decision, what's the wrong decision. It's really about what kind of experience you want to have. Do you need to take a break from life and slow down your pace? Do you want to just spend more time with yourself? Do you want to get out there and be connected to more people? And do you want to create a community? What kind of experience do you want to have? When you kind of reframe that question, when you're making decisions about maybe a life change or what to do next in your life, a lot of people immediately go for this kind of dualistic way of thinking of what's right and what's wrong. And really for you, I see some wisdom coming through in October where it's almost like you're reframing an internal question. And it's not, is this right or is this wrong? It's kind of like, what kind of experience do I want to have? And that helps to kind of guide you and create a path, if you will, towards the direction that you want to go. So I pulled some cards for you. Let's see, I used this deck called Threads of Fate. It's a really pretty deck. And one of the first cards I pulled was the Sovereign. And you are really creating like a strong self-autonomy. This is who I am, this is what I want to do, this is how I do it, this is my way, this is my authentic way. You're really owning your energy in your own, you're being the master of your own universe, if you will. You're claiming your energy as yours, and you're owning your energy as yours, and you are making decisions in your life based on your truth, your unique, authentic truth, not some group energy, not some community, not other people in your life, but you're really kind of connecting to yourself, when you go to make changes in lifestyle and decisions and directions in your life. Okay. It's kind of like someone wearing a crown, you know, where they are the authority in their own energy. And that's kind of what I see for you in October. When I look at an image, when I look at an image, I see the image of like a horse grazing in a field, and it looks like you've been on a journey. Like you've been on kind of a long journey, going from one place to another place in your energy or in your experience or in your life. And you aren't kind of at the end yet. You're still on that journey, but you're, taking a break, enjoying what's around you on the way. So I feel like this has to do, I just get this impression that you're in a big transition or maybe a big transformation. And instead of focusing kind of like on the result and on the destination, I see you really kind of, learning how to enjoy the journey and how to be on a journey, and taking breaks and kind of connecting with yourself along the journey. Another thing I see that came out of this deck was the Weaver. It's kind of like two hands with a sword and some threads. And usually what this card symbolizes is like, we have this life filled with relationships and dynamics and patterns and communities. We have these threads that connect us with everything, is what this card kind of symbolizes. And this card is kind of prompting a question of like, what threads in your life do you want to keep? What threads do you want to cut? What threads do you want to create? And, that's why there's this image of a sword there, because your truth might come through and say, I'd really like to cut this thread. I'd like to break this relationship, or I'd really like to cut this thread and, create a new job, or I'd really like to cut this thread and upgrade my home, or I'd really like to create a new thread, and find some new communities or a friend, so this is kind of a card that has you observe your life, as the creator, and the ties that you have in your life, the way your connections, the way you're connected to your life, and observe the energy and kind of what's working, what's not working. Reminding you that you're the weaver of all those threads in your life. And so when I look at like maybe a clairvoyant image, I see an image of a cactus that has a lot of spikes on it. So immediately when I see a cactus, I think of an energy or a person or a circumstance that is really kind of prickly and defensive or protective or just uncomfortable. And there might be something in your life that you're becoming more aware of like, maybe it's triggering you, maybe it's uncomfortable, maybe you tend to feel like you have to protect yourself, or keep yourself safe in some way. That might be like a situation that you're bringing to the table to see if you want to kind of cut that tie, maybe with a relationship or an experience or a circumstance, whatever it might be. Another card that came out of the deck for those of you going through your embodied enlightenment is the Outlaw. It's kind of like this shoe, this boot. You know, in general, this card speaks, oh, look, this card has cactuses on it. How funny. Yeah. Well, I mean, this card, well, in general, sorry about that. This card in general speaks about kind of stepping outside the box, stepping outside of a group energy, you know, kind of being a bit of a rebel, you know, not following the law, if you will. There might be rules, there might be unconscious agreements, there might be expectations being held on you that really don't resonate with you, that you don't want to align with or follow. And there might be kind of something rising in you to step outside of that, you know, to break outside of the box, to step outside of the group energy, to really do things on your own. I mean, the fact that we have these three cards together, you know, makes me think that you're really connecting with your authentic truth. You're being called to maybe cut some ties and break out of a box or a group energy, to, you know, rebel, if you will. Might feel like you're rebelling, but you're really just kind of owning your sovereignty. And, you know, sometimes that does involve you kind of stepping out of a group energy or community energy, or just, you know, going against what everyone does, you know, doing things truly for yourself. When I look at kind of a clairvoyant for this image, you know, I see a very expansive image of almost like the night sky or the universe. You know, there's just something calling you. You know, there seems to be something calling you, like a different potential, you know, a dream. But, you know, something seems to be calling you that you want to follow, and it feels much more expansive and much more bright for you. But it would require that maybe you don't fit in, you know, maybe by following that dream or following that potential that's calling you, it, you know, makes you kind of different from everyone else, or it doesn't really necessarily mean that you fit into the community that you're in or the group that you're in, or some of the expectations that are put upon you, or the agreements that are put upon you, or the rules that you have to follow, you know. And so this card is kind of saying, yeah, if you want to follow that, you might be a little bit different. You might be like an outlaw. You might not exactly fit in. All right, guys. Thank you so much for watching. If you liked this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. It really helps me out a lot. I would love to grow this channel a little bit more. And I hope you have a good October. If you celebrate Halloween, happy Halloween. Take care. Bye.